Welcome back, legends. I hope you're all fantastic. On today's video, we're going to do a deep dive on the delay block on the quad Cortex. I want to show off some of my favorite settings in here, and I also want to offer up some suggestions for future improvements with this delay block. We'll get to that at the end of the video. If you're curious, of course, there will be timestamps on here, but for now, I've got my PRS CE24 standard plugged straight in. I've got two different amp blocks in this preset, the EVH Stealth Red EL34 or the Boogie Lone Star model. I'm using my free cab IR that's available in the video description, and I have a little bit of the tight plate. Let's hear the dirty sound first. Pretty straightforward, cleanish, and very dirty sound right there. We'll roll with the Lone Star for now. Before we hear some specific delay sounds on here, let's just take a look at the available delay types. And essentially there's a set of groupings in here. We've got analog delay, digital delay, dual delay, reverse delay, some simple types in there that are lacking some of the parameters, and I'm guessing some of the overhead CPU usage of the more advanced types. There's a slapback and a tape delay. They come in mono and stereo variations on there. And the first thing to address is the real differences between the mono and stereo types on here. So the mono really refers to the input method on there. Any of the mono types actually some incoming stereo signals to mono before processing them, whereas the stereotypes won't. As an example of that, I'm going to use this dual delay over here, where you can see I've got 398 milliseconds on the left channel, 798 milliseconds on the right channel, going for the kind of EVH style dual delay thing. And what I'm going to do is let you hear that, then I'm going to run it into a mono delay with the minimum delay time and the mix at 100%. I've turned all the filtering off. This will collapse the stereo image in a way the stereo digital delay doesn't, and we'll hear that just afterwards. So I'll just play a few simple chords, without and then with it. Along with that different input behavior, these stereotypes generally have more parameters available. So let's start with the stereo digital delay on here and take a look at what we've got. There's some pretty standard parameters in here. You've got a mix control, a feedback control, high pass and low pass, as well as a ping pong switch on here. There is a simple ping pong delay if you don't want all these parameters and you just want a basic ping pong, but you can add it to the digital stereo. Then you can do that with the stereo tape and analog as well, which is pretty cool. There is the ability to just plug in the delay time that you want. You turn the sync button off to do that, or you can sync the delays to the underlying BPM on here and set different rhythmic subdivisions. For example, if I set up a dotted eighth note delay, I came over here on the unit and plugged the tap tempo in, I'd get and you can hear the low pass is quite extreme on there. It's at 3 kilohertz, so the delays are quite dark. If you want something brighter, just crank that up. You've got controls for the modulation rate and depth over here. And on the second page, you have a width control, which is pretty interesting. I initially thought what the width control would be is a modulation LFO phase parameter. And this is a little bit nerdy and techie, but essentially if you've got a true stereo digital delay and you want to modulate the delay lines, most units will give you the ability to offset the LFO phase. So for example, while the delay time is being modulated up on the left channel, you could have it modulate down on the right channel and get a super wide effect. After testing it, what the width actually does is it actually just introduces a very slight left to right channel delay offset. So if I turn this down to 0, my delays will sound like they're coming straight down the center. If I crank it all the way up, they do sound wider, but it's because there is a very slight time delay between the left and the right. So whether you have modulation involved or not, you're going to have that kind of faux widening effect in there. Personally, I would prefer to have an LFO phase parameter in there so that I could actually have my delay line synced, but I could control the modulation behavior, again, to get that classic thing where as the left channel modulates up, the right channel modulates down, and vice versa. It's a really natural sounding effect. And of course, you could get values other than 90 or 180 degrees for the phase in there. Super nerdy, that is one suggestion that I would offer up here. Let's move on with the parameters because we can set trails on or off. So when you bypass the delay unit, do you want the delays to immediately cut off or do you still want them to echo out? Then what I think is really cool in here, and probably my favorite aspect of the stereo digital and mono digital in here, are the dynamic depth parameters. So pulled straight from the classic TC2290 in here, you've got dynamic depth. You can set the amount of ducking. Then you can have it set up to either be a ducker or a gated delay. I really like that they've included the gated example in there. Essentially, a ducked delay will turn down the overall delay mix while you're playing, and then it will turn it up when you're not playing. A gated delay is the opposite. It will leave the delays where they are when you're playing, and it will turn them down or turn them all the way off if you set it up with no signal present on there. So if we set the threshold quite low on here, I'm going to set the attack to around, let's go quite fast with the attack, and the release around, say, 150 milliseconds. I'm going to set dynamic depth to around 15 dB over here. Let's have a listen to a ducked delay on here and then a gated delay. A gated delay will be the opposite. While I'm playing, you're going to hear the delays when I stop playing. If I set this up with a really fast attack and release and lots of depth on there, it will actually just kill the delays. There's even some more advanced parameters like the knee and feedback depth on there. And there is a gain reduction meter on there for the ducker. I think they've done a really good job with this particular section on here. So that's the stereo digital delay. The mono digital delay essentially works in the same way. You can sync everything, you can have trails, you can have modulation in there, and there is a ducker section. The big difference is there's not that width parameter in there. Again, because it's a mono delay, I guess it doesn't make sense to put the width parameter in there. Although, you know, if you wanted mono input but still having it wide, I see no reason why you couldn't do that, but I'm getting absolutely distracted over here. Let's hear the analog delay next over here. I've got the analog stereo. We've got some similar parameters in here. As you can see, this main page looks very, very similar on there. The modulation depth is a lot more effective on here. I've noticed that as you crank it up, you really start to hear the onset of modulation a lot faster. Then there is a drive parameter along with the width. If you want a beautiful sounding wide stereo delay, this is a great place to start. And I have to play this riff. Just rolling with a quarter note delay with the ping pong on, cranking up the modulation depth on there is pretty glorious. Let's hear the tape delay next. Instead of modulation rate and depth, you have wow and flutter. So normally wow and flutter are going to be sort of a very low frequency modulation, a very high frequency modulation on there. You've got all the same parameters. You can sync stuff up on the secondary page. You can set up ping pong and trails. I'm going to leave ping pong on. I'm going to crank up the mix over here. You can see different low pass and high pass values at the default. One thing that I really like about the Quad Cortex is if you've got favorite settings for a given block, you can save them as parameter defaults on there. So every time you drop that in, it's just going to start with your favorite settings on there. So maybe what I will do is go over to the clean amp over here, and let's have a listen to what Wow, Flutter, and Drive do on here. I might go for a longer delay. Let's go for a half note delay over there. Go for some kind of sound on sound stuff. I'll crank the feedback up, and you'll hear there is some kind of saturation and degradation going on with this particular delay type. Another thing that I would like to see added, especially for the tape delay where you've got that wonderful degradation and modulation happening, would be a delay hold feature in the dual delay over here. You can see we've got lots and lots of parameters going on, but there is no delay hold, and there's no delay hold in any of the other types. There is a dedicated freeze block, but it would be cool to have that in the delay, especially for the tape type, so that you could sort of freeze something, then manipulate the delay time and get some old school tape style pitch shifting sounds on there. We're on the dual delay now. This is actually my daily driver on here, syncing up a quarter note for the left channel, an eighth note or a dotted eighth note on the right channel, scaling the feedbacks, mix at 30%, cross feedback I'm going to turn all the way off just for now so we can have a listen to what that does. On the secondary page, I haven't linked the feedback, but it's very handy for the dual delay. There's no ducking, but I might introduce it over there. And then we've got high pass and low pass along with some modulation in there. So what I will do is let you hear this without the cross feedback, then I'll introduce some cross feedback for you. So without the cross feedback and this particular set of rhythmic values, you're getting this da 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 sort of rhythmic pattern, a polyrhythm in there. When you add the cross feedback, you get da 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 da. So it kind of fills out the sound in there. There's no diffusion available in any of the delay blocks at the moment. I did see in a press release Neural put out last week, they said they are working on a Lexicon PCM70 inspired delay in there, which I assume is going to be a delay type that has diffusion in there. And a dual delay with diffusion or a multi-tap delay with diffusion would be an awesome addition in here. Now, the circular delay style thing, you can kind of hack your way to in a lot of units that have dual delay with cross feedback. And I don't know if this is intentional or if this is a bug, but you can't really do that on the quad cortex the way you can with, say, an Axifex or a Helix or an old Lexicon MPX1. Just about every other dual delay I've ever used can do this. Let's do it. We're going to set up a quarter note delay over here, then we're going to have a half note delay over here. So the idea is, let's say X milliseconds, then 2X milliseconds. I'm going to turn the feedbacks all the way down. I'm going to crank up the cross feedback. What this should do is it should give me a left delay, then a right delay that are equally spaced, and then it should give me a center delay. And again, the distance between all of those should be the same, but this is what we get. I'm not getting that third delay straight down the center if I do this on my Axifex, if I do this on the old Lexicon MPX, if I do this on an Eventide H3000 or Eclipse, I get that behavior on there. Just about every other delay can do that. The quad cortex isn't doing that, and that's a little bit frustrating because I really like that particular setup for those delays in there. If I introduce some feedback, and even if I link the feedbacks on here, again, it's a cool function, but I'm just not getting that behavior. It does sound cool nevertheless. So that's another suggested improvement that I would like to see in there, is that cross-feedback behavior where you can set up a circular style delay. In fact, if they added that and then they added diffusion to the dual delay block, you wouldn't really need to have a PCM70 inspired block in there. But nevertheless, I'm looking forward to seeing how they implement the circular delays in there. So we've had a look at the dual delay for my kind of daily driver. Another great setting for the dual delay is over here. These are pulled directly from the Boss SDE 3000 pedal, the EVH one. I measured the delays in there. These are the delay values that you get. So 398 on the left, 798 on the right. I think this is preset number 1. Let's go over to the 5153 Stealth. This is an awesome sounding lead delay, and a fun tip in here with the overall high and low pass is generally if you want your delays to kind of sit under your main signal, go hard with the low pass. The high pass I might set to 20 Hertz, but if we hear this wide open versus with the low pass brought down, it's going to be pretty interesting. If you're into your ambient sounds, the dual reverse delay is a lot of fun on here. So essentially it's got very similar parameters to the dual delay, but you've got this feedback mode in here. You've either got flip or you've got reverse. Let's have a listen to reverse and then we'll have a listen to flip. The extra parameters in here, you can see you've got overlap and then your dynamic section, and then you've got your high pass and low pass over here. I'm going to bring the low pass down to around 8K over here. Am I going to link the feedback? I might leave it alone for now, and then I will play around with the overlap parameter on there. So I'll introduce some cross feedback too. We should have some absolute fun with this. Check it out. Reverse delay has a lot of potential for some creative sound design in there. And of course, because you can run so many instances of the delay block, running a dual delay into a dual reverse delay and then a stereo delay or a tape delay for some width or crust on there can give you some awesome ambient sounds. If you haven't already, I'd encourage you to go and grab the Midnight presets that they shared on the CORTEX cloud, because they're running multiple delays in every single preset over there, and it's quite a lovely wet ambient wash that they've got going on. So we didn't really look at any of the simple types in here. You know, the simple delay just kind of strips away the ducker and a bunch of the extra filtering and modulation on there, but they're pretty self-explanatory. To me, the tape delay with its crusty drive and modulation possibilities, the dual delay, the dual reverse delay, and the stereo delay are the way to go if you love big, greasy, wet sounds. Of course, if you're more into the ambient thing, stacking delays is going to be great. And, you know, if you're old school and you just want a slapback delay in front of an amp for like a country style tone, it's really easy to do that on there. Having said that, I think there are a bunch of possibilities that they could expand into. One, a true multi-tap delay on there with at least 4 delay taps would be awesome, and the ability to control where you pan each tap. Having a phase reverse option for the stereo delays, kind of like a TC2290. Having an LFO phase parameter in there would be awesome. In addition to the width control, I like that kind of slight delay offset thing that you can do in there, but it would be nice to have granular control over it. And again, fixing that dual delay cross feedback behavior, that could be way better in my opinion. I am looking forward to the next update that adds that PCM70 inspired circular delay, because if they do it properly, they should also add diffusion in there. For now, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the delays in the Quad Cortex. What are you using? What are some of your favorite tips and tricks in there? Share them in the comment section below. And if you like what I'm doing here on the channel and you want to support me directly, links to my band Ragdoll and all our music, digital and physical, is linked in the video description, along with my Patreon, where you can get some exclusive content, backing tracks, and access to exclusive polls, giveaways, and patron Q&As. For now, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time.